Jenn and Cynthia, welcome to the Elevating Resilience podcast.
Thank you
Thank you so much, Ange.
Yeah.
We are so glad to be here.
So the moment I met you and you guys really agreed to come on the podcast, it was that moment for me was, Mom, I made it. Because here were these two amazing women who went on a journey similar to mine, who were achieving dreams that I can only hope to achieve. And when I saw the background of where you guys have been, you left education, you're now doing exactly what you love and what you're meant to be. It was just a dream to have you on this podcast. So I'm going to let you guys each explain a little bit more in detail about yourselves, but I want to say thank you. And being, like I texted you, being in greatness today is so good for me, and it's going to be good for all three of us. So why don't you get started, Jenn?
Yes. Okay. So I began my educational journey in New York City. I was an English as a second language teacher. And back then I was working in Hell's Kitchen and had 16 different languages in one classroom. And none of them were English. So back then in New York City, which was 90s, you were hired in September. And if you were alive in June, you got hired back. Mm-hmm. So I was there for a very long time, moved out of New York City after 9/11. So I lived through that, where watching the Twin Towers fall down outside my building and having to make sure every kid got home. And we were living there. You know, things were on fire by my apartment for like 2 weeks. So it was very crazy
Did you grow up there?
I am from Orange County, so an hour out of New York City. Mm-hmm. I went to school undergrad in Boston and then moved to New York for grad school and got hired down there. So from there, after 9/11, we moved out, and I moved out of teaching ESL and moved into counseling. So, and then we moved down here. My husband used to play beach volleyball. Well, he still plays beach volleyball. And we would travel down to Point Pleasant every single weekend to watch volleyball and, and then come back. And one day we were like, why don't we just live here?
Yeah.
So he's a teacher. As a teacher, we literally quit our jobs, and everyone thought we were crazy, put our house up. We had built a home, put our house on the market. Our house sold in a week, and we moved to the shore. Wow. And ended up getting jobs. And I got a job in a high school as a counselor, very, chaotic district where when I went in to get the job, the principal basically said, I'm looking for someone who can literally walk in here with no training and function. And I said, I'm your girl. I just came from the city. So I did that. And then after that, moved into administration because I thought that would be a great thing for me to do, is go back to school and get my admin degree. So I did that, and then ended up getting a job a month after I graduated with that degree and moved into a chaotic district in Monmouth County, which we'll talk about a little bit more. And once I got there is when I said, this is not for me.
Yeah.
So that's when, and at that place was where Cindy and I met, and we kind of started our journey from there. And now I'm in private practice for therapy, and I'm a integrative nutrition health coach. So I do work a lot with food and mood. I'm a yoga teacher and I'm a Reiki master. So I do a lot of energy work. And this, I feel like, is where I want to be.
That's amazing.
For sure.
That's really cool. All right.
Ange, thanks so much for having us on.
Sure.
Greatness. Yeah. I think
I
there's a lot of greatness sitting across the table from me too. So I started out as a health and phys ed teacher in Old Bridge at Cedar Ridge, which no longer exists because Cedar Ridge and Madison became one high school. And I was the gymnastics coach, track coach. I coached the distance kids in running, boys and girls, in the winter. And then I did that for 10 years as a coach. And then once I had my son, I stopped coaching. Just too hard to put in those kinds of hours. And then I eventually became a school counselor in Old Bridge. And then, just like Jenn, I was like, I'm going to move on and become a director. And I became the director in Asbury Park after being in Old Bridge for 25 years, well loved, and had a great reputation. Go to Asbury Park, where I started at the bottom. 8 people had the job in 9 years, and then I came in. But I loved it there. I learned so much. Stayed for 5 years, and then I retired from public ed. And fortunately for me, I took a position as a specialist professor at Monmouth University and stayed there for 10 years. I was the clinical coordinator, and I also taught. In the meantime, I was exposed to yoga calm for children, became a trainer for them. Long story, but real short. I had to become a yoga teacher. So at 59 years old, I became a yoga teacher. Wow. And then I started my own business where I would combine yoga, movement, mindfulness, meditation into the classrooms, social emotional learning.
Okay.
Then I had met Jenn along the way. And here we are. And now I basically teach, I'm also trained in mindfulness-based stress reduction. So I basically consider myself a stress reduction educator.
Yeah. So here's why I say greatness, because this is like both of your spaces. I need both things.
Everybody does.
Everybody does, right?
Everybody
and
does.
so how we met was at the symposium, right?
Yes.
And with Lead You and SBTS and JD and Shauna were like, Aunt, you need to meet these women. Like they're right up your alley. Like come in. And then instantly I bought your book and read your book in 3 days and apply those principles to what I'm doing. But it was also your energy to immediately connect to me about athletics, about education, and I mean, come on, mindfulness and the energy that you talk about. It was just like awesome that day to see that. And then I went and looked you guys up, and it was really cool because you have so much experience in resilience and adversity, and now helping people find that in themselves is just amazing to me. So I'm going to get started with my question is define resilience.
All right, so I'm going to take this one. Jenn and I are going to go back and forth because we think so much alike, but
we would have the same answers.
Yeah.
Got it.
So, Life on a Knife's Edge. If you haven't read the book, Dr. Rahul Jandial, he is a neuroscientist. He's also a neurosurgeon, one of the best brain surgeons in the country. So he defines resilience as sustained resilience, and that's what you have. You're born with sustained resilience. So, every day, we are resilient because of what we were born with. But then there's processive resilience. And that's what Jenn and I are focused on. That's what you bring to the fight. And when I mean the fight, I mean the challenges of every day. So how do you grow this resilience? And that's what we teach people to do. How to grow resilience.
Okay.
Through mindfulness, through meditation, through self-awareness, through self-reflection, through contemplative practices.
So it's the grit too.
It is the grit.
It is the grit, right?
It is the grit.
You have to do the work.
Yeah.
You have to do the work.
You have to do the work.
Yeah. And so something that I thought was interesting is like some people are born more resilient than others, right? And then you said this progressive work that you do on yourself. And then on top of that, like your life experience make you more resilient, would you say? How would you answer that?
I would say yes, the way that you look at your life experience. So the way that I look at my challenge is, every day I'm faced with a different challenge. So am I going to look at it as, wow, I get to do this? Or why is this happening for me? I have to change the perception of what the challenge is.
Yeah.
And by the way, when I speak to students or, Jenn and I, we speak to adults, we always say to them, you are resilient. You're resilient just because you're sitting here. If you weren't resilient, you wouldn't be at this table.
Yeah.
And then you can still become even more resilient. And that's what we're trying to show people.
It's all about how you look at your situation.
Sure. And so with that, I need a personal experience. So tell me your resilience journey.
So
Jenn.
there's many. And this is what we always think, life lessons are what come to you every day. But going back to when I became a director of guidance.
Okay.
So I was hired a month later in Neptune, Monmouth County. The position became available because the guidance director that was presently in place had passed away unexpectedly. And that's why the job was open. So when I received the job, it was, schools, it was the previous director had, I think, maybe a high school, middle school position. I was hired for the district. So 7 schools. Yeah.
I'm going to interrupt her here. He was only the high school.
Only high school.
And,
Cindy knew him prior.
And you were also the testing director, in charge of testing.
Yes,
he was not.
Right. So
when you step in now, you have the 7 schools and he just had 1.
He had 1.
Let me can do
I
it.
have
and
all
testing.
of us and the district test coordinator. So when I met Cindy, she was working at Monmouth at the time and had given me, 8 or 9 interns. And the first day I met her, she literally came in and said, "Hey, I'm Cindy O'Connell. you have the worst job in the world.
I love
and I
that.
was like, who's this woman? But she was right, because she had also been in charge of testing in Asbury Park.
Yeah.
And now I was doing that. You know, with testing, you're inflicting stress on students, and it's so stressful. And when you're working the district, there's always a test somewhere.
Yes.
So not only that, you know, working in a district where the first year that I was there, we had homicides, we had suicides, we had accidental deaths, we had medical related surgical deaths, all in 1 year. Multiple things happening that affect the whole school, because, you know, everyone's related, someone's cousin, someone's sister is in this school. So it was a lot. And at the time I had an infant at home and a toddler at home.
Oh my goodness.
So I was doing all of that, running around. My husband was home trying to like make up the time where I wasn't home. I was working all the time. And, you know, and on top of that, working weekends, I would literally bring my kids to school on the weekends, and the custodians would take them and go, we're going to go watch the basketball game so mom can work. Wow. They literally would take them so that I could just survive. Yeah. You know, not to mention the staff there was grieving. Yes. So they were not happy to see me coming in. And I remember we used to have these things called the administrative council, where he would come and all the admin would get together and talk about what they're doing. And the first couple of times I went there, and I would just sit in the back and just go, wow, these people don't like each other. They had been working together for a very long time, many of them. And they would just like sabotage programs and like not be kind and not see the vision that it's not your school. We're here for kids. Yeah. And our kids were hurting. And no one wanted to really acknowledge that. And I remember thinking like, wow, these people don't like each other. I will never be able to survive here another 20 years. Yeah. Because that's what I was facing when my kids were really little. So, and then I remember saying to my husband, like I just said like, I can't stay here. I have to have a plan to get out. And, you know, Cindy had come in, you know, with Yoga Calm for Children, which is a program she had trained in, and called me and said, hey, I just got trained in this program. Like, let me come in and teach a workshop. So she came in and did a workshop for school counselors and nurses. And it was wonderful. It was like all the things that we were doing now. And you could just see the release in the staff. They were like, oh my God. And that's when I said, oh, I'm not staying here. I'm going to quit my job and do this. So I went home and I told my husband, I said, you know what? I'm going to quit my job. Now at that point, I was making really good money. I'm in admin, you know, working a lot. I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to start a private practice and infuse yoga and therapy into it. And he just said, oh, well, who's going to come? Well-meaning, who's going to come? Yeah. And I said, well, you know, I had written my resignation letter and I left it on my computer for the duration of the entire school year. Because I said, I don't know when I'm going to hit this button, but I'm hitting it. Wow. And I have to find a vision in the next 10 months. And I gave myself, by the end of the school year, I'm going to be done. And I didn't know what that looked like. And it was every day going there. Once I made that decision, made it a little bit easier because I could put up with what I was going to get, you know, in that job, because I knew I wasn't going to be there. Yeah. But that definitely, like, knowing I had a plan, and then honestly going back to athletics, you know, was what saved me. I've been an athlete my entire life. I was a swimmer. I was a swimmer from age 3, competitive swimmer. And then, you know, in my later years became a marathon runner, and, you know, I became a yoga teacher at age 45. Wow. So if that was my constant, was, you know, athletic training for sure. Yeah.
So like both of you, like, have a story, right? So like, what is that? Why, like, now that you're doing what you love because of what you went through, like, you found the peace in those things, right?
Life lessons.
Yeah.
Life lessons.
So for me, I mean, I started meditating 35 years ago. Okay. So I can always remember that because my son's 35 years old, and I started meditating after I had him. Okay. Because he was a colicky baby. I had a 45-minute commute. I was never sleeping. So, and I was always fascinated by spirituality and religions. I mean, I read Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance back when I was like nobody was talking about these things. And I'm like, you know, fascinated. So I'm getting my hair cut by somebody who doesn't usually do it. This is the thing. You have to always have beginner's mind. You never know when you're going to be presented with something if you're open. So she said to me that she learned transcendental meditation. I was like, tell me about this. So I said, well, how do you get things done if you're not multitasking? God bless you. And I And she's like, well, you get everything done. You just do things differently. I will never forget that she said that.
That's pretty good.
And this is my hairstylist. Oh, she wasn't even mine.
Yeah.
That night, I signed up for transcendental meditation with this medical doctor in Toms River. So, and it's a pretty intense practice because it's 20 minutes twice a day. You receive a mantra. And honestly, it's definitely changed my life. And I became more, I've run 2 marathons as well. And I was a big, short race participant. But during the marathon, I'm saying my mantra, like it was just a refocus. Yeah. So anyway, everybody has a story about why they started to meditate, and that was mine, and it definitely made the difference.
Yeah.
Now I really practice mindfulness more, meditation. So that's just focusing on the breath. Sometimes I'll go back to my mantra though too.
So there's a difference.
Oh, there's a difference.
Okay. So I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, if you're really practicing TM, you have to be trained in it officially.
It's a whole course.
But it is.
Okay.
And you get a Sanskrit mantra that is just for you.
Oh, wow.
So, but any one of us can do a mantra like so hum, I am. And there's something kind of magical about saying it in Sanskrit. So hum. It almost sounds like your breath. Inhale.
Yeah.
Exhale. Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, we all need it. We all need it. I mean, Jenn and I speak in front of, doesn't matter, athletes. We just did something at the police academy, school districts, lawyers and judges we've worked with. Doesn't matter. Everybody has stress. What do you see as stress? And then how do you get back down to calm?
Mm-hmm. And so they need a mindset for that. So talk about mindset.
You want to do your mindset first?
Yeah.
Mindset for me or mindset of how?
However you.
So a lot of people know they need this, right? We all know. We all have these practices that are, I don't know, even just to go back to saying buzzwords. But how does one commit to it? Would have to be your mindset. You have to be that has to be your mentality.
You have to want, again, you have to, there's self-awareness.
Okay.
I always say, even when we were talking about our book, our first principle is self-awareness. If you don't know that there's a change that needs to be made, how are you going to work on what you need to do?
Excellent.
Okay. However, most people do know, and that kind of goes into the research questions of what we were finding when we were researching the book is that, most people know they need to make a change, but they're just like, I know what I have to do and don't want to do it or don't know how to do it or I'm terrified to do it. This change is hard. Or, you have to change the way that you think. But besides having a beginner's mind, when we were researching our book, we found a couple of thought-provoking questions. And, one of them was, are people doing the best they can? There's no right answer, but
what do you think?
What do you think? Do you think, do you think people are doing the best they can?
In general?
No.
Yeah. And so
you and Jenn.
When we
and
were
I'm
talking about this, I said in about 2 seconds, no. And Cindy said, well, maybe people are, and there's no wrong answer.
Because we don't know what's going on in their lives. I just want to preface that. I'm not,
exactly.
So
I
give that little bit of grace.
Yes.
Anytime we ask people that, we have, the no's are firm, no way. And then people are like, well, what, you don't really know what's going on. So there's no wrong answer, but are we doing the best we can? It's a thought-provoking question. Sure. And then the next thing that you think about is there something that you want to change? So when we were writing our book, we asked hundreds of people that question. Everyone we saw, we were like, is there anything in your life you want to change? and we only found 2 people that said I'm good. And we were even like, are you sure? Nothing. No, I'm really good.
And they were both mine and they were both men. And one is about 35, the other is 44.
Okay.
And they were, I watched their faces. I'm a good read on people. And it was,
they were okay.
I'm good.
But all the other hundreds of people said, of course, there's something that I want to change. So right there is a shift in your mindset, the recognition that okay, there's something more that I want to do. And the second question was, what's holding you back? And that's where everyone gave you the excuses. Don't have time, can't do it, too busy, whatever, blah, 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 blah. And question 3 is then what's one thing that you can do to shift your mind? and make a small change, because we know with research that doing so much at one time doesn't work. People quit, like, even in New Year's resolutions, January 19th is actually called Quitter's Day.
Really?
Yeah. Because the brain actually, yes. So if you need to go to the gym, wait till January 19th and then you'll have your parking spot back. But, January 19th is Quitter's Day because in the brain, after 19 or 20 days, you recognize that, like, this is hard.
Yeah.
And so, most people after that will go, like, hell with this. I'm not doing this anymore.
Sure.
But you have to start small. So small shifts and small, like you said, you've seen in the book, nothing in our book is more than a minute or two. So small changes will last to bigger changes long term. And that's the work that we're trying to do, is to give people a sustainable change. Yeah. Oftentimes as educators, we would go to all these workshops and sit and listen to somebody and go like, oh my God, they're awesome. And then you never hear from them again. We would never have any tools, no way to access what they were doing. And then you just go, oh, okay. So what we're always hoping to do is make, shift people's mindsets little bits at a time so they can see, they can do it, and leave them with something that's going to last.
Yeah. Okay.
So elevate or escape. What do you want? That's what we say to people. What do you want? What do you want? So it's harder to do elevation. It's easy to escape. What do people mostly do when they're depressed? They watch more TV, right? Whine, W-I-N-E, or whine, W-H-I-N-E. We love to complain. Not me, but a lot of people do.
Sure.
So it's how you see things. So elevation, do I want to put in the time? And a lot of people will say to me, well, I don't have the time. It's like, okay. So now I just say, well, it's not a priority.
Yeah.
It's not a priority for, so going back to my meditation practice, that is a priority for me. Yeah. I am going to do that every single day because it makes me a better person. I'm a nicer person. I deal with life easier.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to look at how do you look at stress?
Yeah.
So for me, when I was running races, I could feel that pump, that adrenaline rush right before, like, okay, I want to run. I want to break 33 minutes or whatever it is in this 5-mile race. So I could feel that in myself. Was that stress? Yes, but it was good stress.
Yeah.
So now before I speak, I feel that same thing.
Oh, yeah.
But it's good stress. It's like I'm pumped up because I don't really care. If there's one person out there that gets it, I'm going to walk out of here with a smile on my face. So I think that people don't even know what stress really is in their body, that it can be good, that it can be bad.
They're missing the mind-body connection.
Yeah, they don't know. And that's something that Jenn are always trying to teach people. Like your breath, like we gave you a breath stone, your breath is your superpower. You always have your breath.
Yeah.
I don't always have my husband. I don't always have my son. I don't always have this or Jenn, but I always have my breath.
Yeah.
So one of the first things that we teach people to do, athletes or not, but athletic people, you have to have a connection to your breath. But sometimes they don't know how to use that outside of athletics.
Yeah.
So I have high-level athletes in my practice, and they're constantly complaining about the anxiety or stress or overthinking.
Yeah.
The overthinking is a huge component. And that's one of the things that we always try to teach people is that if you know how to breathe, then when you start to escalate, you'll know how to bring it down. Then you're not going to be going, oh my gosh, I'm panicked. Now I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So actually, when you look at the research on panic attacks, which is common now everywhere, not just in athletics, the first thing that if you can connect to regulating your nervous system, you will stop that attack from happening. You'll be able to bring yourself back down just so you can, it's not going to solve all your problems, but it will level you out enough for you can say, what do I want to do?
Yeah.
How am I going to respond and not react? To this.
I've actually been recently reading about like how your nervous system, if you're somebody that comes from a lot of trauma and you've been through a lot, it's what is it called? It's like it's always elevated.
So your cortisol level is always elevated. So you're in a state
flight mode all the time.
So your sympathetic nervous system is raised instead of your parasympathetic nervous system. So we teach people how to calm down. So one little thing happens, your coffee isn't ready or it's taking too long or something, that sets you off. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's stress? No, it's not stress.
Yeah.
But some people might take it as that.
Yes.
And then they're heightened all day long.
Yes.
And that's
they don't
the
have
problem.
the calm down. They don't have the connection to the parasympathetic nervous system to be able to regulate.
Yeah.
So then we see it in school all the time. Those kids where you're like, good morning. They're like, talk to me.
Yeah.
You know, they're in a heightened state all day long.
Yeah.
And that could be because they've come from a home where there's something going on. They just had a fight with their mom, or there's no food in the house or whatever. And they're elevated. They're on edge all day.
It's important for teachers to understand this.
But they're the same way.
Yeah.
And
they're the same way.
They're the same way.
So when I think about athletes and I think about myself, like you get a high from this, like I always say, like I was addicted to achievement. So as an athlete, like you guys too, like you're chasing that heightened response, the thrill of it, right? And then you have a coach who is like, okay, this is what it looks like to go, 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 go. And then I think one of the things that I love that's changing with what you guys are doing and hopefully what I get to do is that the kids understand how to bring that down earlier in life. And that's the gift athletics can also give, right? Because I'm the person who is high, because I have this heightened response from my whole life, whether it was from sports and also my life.
Right.
And it was like, when I started meditating, when I started the mind and body experience, I changed my whole life. Like, and that's the why behind wanting to do this for athletes in that space.
And it's got to start from the top down. Like Cindy and I last June already, where we did a presentation at the National Athletic Directors.
Trainers Association.
Association.
Okay.
And so we were really talking to the ADs about like, how do you incorporate this kind of practice with your athletes, especially when you're talking about injured athletes.
Yes.
You have someone who's injured on the ground, like they don't need you coming like all wired up. They want calm.
Yes.
And they need peacefulness. And they were really struggling, some of them.
But they were so receptive. So it was the athletic trainers. So this is where you never know who you're going to connect with. The reason that we were there is because an athletic trainer from Ocean Township High School saw me speak at the summit for 3 years ago or something.
Okay.
For
SPTS?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So she's like, I think the trainers need it.
Yeah.
And they
do. Because think about that. They just run from one incident to the next.
Yeah.
And now they have to be in multiple places at the same time. They need to calm down. So, yeah.
So what I was going to tell you is when I was at that Women in Leadership event, I had an opportunity to talk to maybe like 40 coaches. And there was actually 2 athletic trainers in the audience. And the athletic trainers raised their hand and they said, we need help. We need help with the mental side of athletics. And can you give me some strategies? These mental fitness skills are making sense because here's an athlete. I mean, you remember recovering in the athletic training room. Imagine being able to have somebody be like, hey, take this time right now to
do this.
This. And I think they're on the front lines, the athletic trainers as well. Like, I was an athletic training kid just because of my injuries, but it was very interesting to see that, like you just said, it's from the top down, but we need to we have to recognize from the top down who else you need, not just coaches, athletic trainers, parents. Like it's this whole.
It's got to be a buy-in. You know, like everyone needs to see it's all in. You had just like what you
I was just gonna say. I was gonna say it. You said it. I love it.
But it has to be. When we see that with anything that we want to implement, it's got to be. Everyone's got to be on board. Otherwise, there's a disconnect, and then it goes, well, I don't need that.
Yeah.
But you can change the way you think, neuroplasticity. So this is the other thing that we teach people. Just the way I train my body every day, I'm going to train my mind every day. So even though I'm an overthinker or I'm aware, like I taught myself not to worry. I no longer worry.
Really?
Yes. Because when has worrying ever changed the outcome?
No, my husband says it's like sitting in a rocking chair going back and forth and not moving.
Well, you're missing so many
and I'm going to tell you how to do it.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you how to do it.
Come on.
I'm serious. This is what I did. You assign yourself a worry time. So you can only worry between 3 and 4 or 4 and 5, whatever is like between 4 and 5 when I was a working mom and, your kid comes home from school and blah, blah, blah. That was a tough time.
Okay.
So that's the time that I picked. If I forget to worry, I cannot worry till the next day.
Okay.
Yeah. So we are big ritual people.
Yes.
I have rituals in the morning, like the gratitude journal. Like every day I write in my sheet, same thing in the morning. I write in my gratitude journal every day who inspired me. So it's not, some world leader or, super athlete, or it might be, but more than likely, I look for the people in my life.
Yeah, I love that.
That just walked into my life. And then a lot of times I'll say to them, hey, the next day, you really inspired me yesterday. And that little thing makes people feel
really good.
Elevated.
It does.
Yeah.
It's
elevated.
Yeah.
But even though, going back to the overthinking and the worry, what I always teach people to do is like, get your feelings out of your head. There's evidence and research to talk about journaling. Like everyone that comes to therapy, they do work and everybody journals.
Yes.
And sometimes people will bring their journal in and be like, you're going to think I'm nuts. But like, they're just thoughts.
Yeah.
So you have to get the thoughts out of your head and write them down. They don't have to make sense. But if you get them out, that's it. And then the other piece of it is that, this goes into brain science, is that you have to attack your thoughts with facts. So if you don't have any, and this goes back to your worrying, if you don't have any facts that this is going to happen, you're not allowed to think that way.
Yeah. My therapist has me do that. I write down my thoughts and then I have to change them.
And what's true.
Yes,
and what's true. Most of it's not.
None of
Nothing's
it's
true. So for me, the worry time, I'm like, I give you 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Like Cindy's generous. You get an hour, you get 10 minutes, set the timer, and then you're done. Done.
Yeah.
Because
I'm being
especially
realistic.
If we're worrying, the biggest thing that I hear from people is like, affects your sleep. I go to sleep and like my brain just spins with all these things that are going on. Okay. And trust me, I used to be just like that too.
Yeah.
But what are you going to fix at 2 a.m.?
Yeah.
What are you fixing at 2 a.m.? Nothing.
And your sleep is the most important thing.
It's the foundation of
everything. Everything. So we also teach people to pause, breathe, respond. So you always have a choice. You can react or respond. The only time I want to react is if I'm in danger or you're in danger and I have to save your life or whatever. And reacting on the field, athletes have to react.
Yes.
But then they also have to learn to not be angry at themselves when they make a mistake.
Yes.
And that's where the reset comes in.
Yes.
So if you were to take, I'm big on take a mindful breath throughout the day. So maybe it's before you eat lunch, like 3 breaths. Just to say, where am I right now? When I make a mistake, I make a lot of mistakes. You send an email without the attachment. You put the pizza on the top of the car and you drive away. Whatever it is.
That would be more than a mistake.
Whatever it is. Yes. But people do that.
People do it.
But then
you hear what people tell
you
us.
have to just reset and just take a breath. The other thing is you're a smiler. So right away, you're raising your serotonin levels just because you smile. That's the best. I mean, people
look around though.
Yeah, look around.
People are not smiling.
They're not smiling. And I asked the question when one high school, I'm talking to students, I know what they're going to say. How many times a day do you think kids smile? Kid says 1.
Oof.
One.
Yeah, it's nuts.
And it's probably worse for the adults. Because they're not smiling either.
Yes,
no, they're not.
They're not. So these are important. What you focus on grows. So if I'm going to constantly be worrying or in a state of fight or flight, then that's my life.
Yeah.
But you can change that.
Yeah. Something I talk about recently about resilience is like, and I learned this from my experience, is it's not always just pushing through. You learn to be resilient, I say, with the pause, with the breath, and with the pivot. And if you can accept those 3, I didn't think that way. And prior to this past summer, like it was always, you just push through. Like this is what you do. This is how you get there. And then when I paused, forced to pause, that practice in my life, again, changed everything for me. And that was me being more resilient. I feel more resilient now in my life because when I have to pause and pivot, I'm okay with it.
But you have to listen to the signs too.
Yes.
So most people
That's
will
huge.
see that, if life doesn't go according to plan and I have to stop, they don't know how to make that pivot. They're like, oh my God, I can't believe this happened to me.
Yeah.
So when you think about it, like you're not looking at the signs. All the failures and all the things that go wrong in life are all life lessons for us. And so if we can notice that, then you can make that pivot and that transaction and shift a little bit. Because if you don't, you're going to get another lesson. You are certainly going to get another lesson and the volume will be turned up a little bit more.
Oh, yeah.
So like what you were saying with your story, you got taken out. You were out of the game for a while because you needed to reset and sit on the bench and go, okay, what do I have to do?
Yeah.
That's what happens to people. And that's usually when they're calling me.
Yes.
Is when they've been sidelined by some reason. And we go back and say, well, what were all the little signs that were showing you that you needed to make a change that you ignored?
Yeah. So let me ask you this. My therapist says to me, she uses this line to me, I don't know if it's your reactions or how you act is your youngest self. If you've never gone back to deal with your youngest self.
Yes, absolutely. Inner child work.
Your child work.
I think too
how do you feel about that?
You know what? There's comfort in what we've always done.
Okay.
And this is the problem. That we don't want to, even though we know it's wrong or we know it doesn't feel good or we know it's, that's why we always go back to our old ways because there's comfort in the old. And there's comfort in negative. There's comfort in worrying. So because that's the way we've always done it. And that goes back to our ancestral positions on this. I'll let her talk on this too.
But, when you're talking about trauma, so, childhood trauma, adverse childhood trauma, like if you haven't dealt with it, because remember, a lot of times what happens to kids, younger kids, and when there's some sort of trauma is that your brain development isn't aligned with you being able to process. So what will happen is the brain will go, oh, that's pretty scary stuff. And let's put that somewhere else because you can't really deal with that right now. So you're just going to whatever. But remember, trauma lives in the body. If you've never heard of the body keeps score. Right. This is a book called The Body Keeps Score.
Well, you'll like this.
It's not easy reading. The first half
you
of the book.
You could listen to it.
I can? Okay.
No, it's better to read it because there's pictures and graphics. And so the first half of the book is all about trauma. It's research on trauma-related experiences.
Okay.
All terrible kinds of trauma. So that's where it's, it may be a bit triggering. And the second half is the research on how to deal with it. Proven methodologies that will help release trauma from the body. So trauma lives in your body. And if you don't go back and deal with it, it will come back to you. Usually when things are good. So, it's almost like, it's like a mental garbage can. When the trash is filled up, it has no other place to go. So it will start to spill out. Yeah. And so usually what will happen, like people have a panic attack and say, I don't know why that happened because I'm feeling great. But that's why. Because when everything is leveled out, your body will go, oh, wait a minute, you have this from 20 years ago that you never dealt with. Here you go. Yeah. So it's really important for you to go back and deal with childhood trauma. Yeah. And you need support and guidance to do that. It's not like you can just do it alone.
Well, yeah, that's why I find this in the space of athletics is with this practice of journaling, with the coaches learning to journal with the kids, get these reflections going on, having these strategies, because as kids nowadays, what they're dealing with in all areas of their life, we could use athletics as a lane to get these kids to learn these principles and then not have the trauma of what has happened in sports fields and everything that happens with, trying to get a kid to do something that they don't want to do or can't do or don't know how to express. And I'm asking these questions because I think it's so important, and having you guys here to be able to explain it to me even more is a lot of it's great, because I think it's important for people at the top to hear, because this is why this is important. This is why mental fitness is important. That's what I call it.
And all the principles in our book, everything that's in there has been tested out on people. Yeah. Not just, we've tested it on ourselves
but we tested it on other people too.
Out on before we everyone. Put it in. And, between the two of us, we've got all walks of life. Yeah. From, athletes to FBI agents to law enforcement and ER workers. And we've tested out on everybody. And what worked is what we put in.
Yeah. It's incredible. Yeah. That's why I just when I read it, I'm like, it's like you guys finished every sentence that I had in this whirling brain. That was like, oh my gosh, that's true. That makes sense. Great. It just gives you validation, that you're thinking the right way. And even having you guys talk about it here, it just makes so much sense, because the way you represent yourselves and what you've done with your lives is you're living proof of it. And that's what people really want to see too, is that living proof, for sure.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if you know who J.J. McCarthy is. Do you follow?
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Michigan. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. He meditates, right?
Yes.
So I started following him when he had lost the season before. Okay. And they had a picture of him in the Wall Street Journal of against a goalpost meditating. But one of the reason he started meditating is because he changed high schools and he was so depressed that he taught himself how to meditate. Now he's in the draft.
Sure.
I mean, like, he did a super job.
Yeah.
But he also says, and this is what I love, he says, I am a person first, then a football player.
100%.
That's
huge.
so important for athletes to understand. Hey, if I blow out my leg and I don't have this anymore, what do I have?
Yeah.
I'm still a person.
Yeah.
So there's so many good role models.
Yeah.
I mean, LeBron James, he's on the Calm app. He meditates.
Yeah. Patrick Mahomes does his own style where he walks the field.
Yes.
You know,
Superman.
And you always think that meditation has to be, I used to think the same thing. It was just this box of I thought meditation was you just sit there like this. And it's like so silly that I thought that until I finally realized like so many pieces of it. That's why I was fascinated with you teaching me those 2 words today. It was like transcendental or what you said.
Transcendental meditation. So, and I just did a whole blog on my website about meditation, you know,
it's
how
just
all
cool.
the different types of meditation.
Meditation can be 1 minute.
Yeah. Yeah.
In fact, I love that if people do that throughout the day.
And that's
just
what these athletes need.
They do.
Like sprinkle the mindfulness throughout the day. Smile. Even though you don't feel like it. Somebody cuts you off on Route 35.
Yeah.
You smile.
Yeah.
Like just be aware of your body.
Sure.
And visualization practices. That helps a lot with, with
injury.
athletes and injury and the overthinking and the panic. See yourself doing it. You know, and doing it the way that you want to see yourself doing it does definitely help.
Visualization's cool.
You
guys do that
all the time?
Yes,
it's huge.
I've started to do that all the time.
Yeah, no,
with
it's
me
really
going
good. It's especially good for athletes that are injured to visualize themselves. I'm trying to think of the athlete's name who broke his leg. Terrible. They told him he would never be on the football
Alex
field
Smith?
again. No, it was somebody else. It was McKinton or something.
Okay.
And then he got back on the field 3 years. He
Wow.
visualized himself. But you also visualize yourself going through the drill. So when I was a gymnastics coach and we had a really good team, and by the way, we create a family for an individual sport. That is critical. That was so important. So like, it's not just about me, it's about all of us. That's how you become state champs. But I would have them visualize themselves on the balance beam before they could talk on the bus. You have to visualize yourself doing the routine.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what I was doing. I mean, this was, this is back 40 years ago.
And how are you getting around the obstacles?
Yes.
You know, so because not everything is just like, okay, I saw it and it's perfect. How are you gonna make the pivots and the shifts when you have something that's difficult in your path?
I love it.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
We're coming to an end, so I want to ask you guys a couple like fun questions, right? So like, obviously I know what your practices, your rituals are now and stuff like that, but what else fills
You don't
your
even
cup?
know the half of it.
I know.
Yeah.
I mean, we could have a whole other
Have a
hour.
whole other hour on our ritual practices.
What fills your cup to be able to fill everybody else's cup?
I am the proponent of saying self-care is not selfish.
Okay.
You cannot fill anybody's cup if you are not filled yourself. So you have to take the time to take care of you. And that's why the rituals and the practices are not negotiable for me.
What's your favorite one that you do?
Honestly, I'm a morning person.
Yeah.
You know, so I get up this morning, I got up at 4:30. So I need my gratitude journal in the morning. I have reflection pages and I do some sort of self-study, whether that's a podcast or reading a little bit of something. And I need to get my movement in the morning. That is how I start my day. So the first the first couple hours of the day, no one else is up. It's just for me. And that's how I can start and be able to then give to everybody else.
How about you, Son?
I start my day the same way. I write in my journal. I have several things readings that I do. Spiritual readings are really important to me. And then I exercise every day. Okay. You know, without doubt.
Not negotiable.
And not negotiable. No. But if I only have time for one thing, I'm going to meditate.
Okay.
That is the one thing that I will not, do without.
One of my favorite questions is this. What would you tell your younger self? What would you tell your high school self, Jenn, about
the high school self?
The high school self, the most
tormented
awkward,
years,
right? The tormented years.
I think I would have told my high school self to just relax a little and let things happen. Like life doesn't have to be so scripted.
Yes.
You know, think about it now. We're sending kids off to college saying, like, you're supposed to know exactly what you want to do with your whole life. When I was a guidance counselor, like, where do you want to go to college and what do you want to do with the rest of your life at 17?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, I think I would just have said, relax and just let it happen.
Okay. Sen?
What would I have told myself? I feel like every single thing that happened to me happened for a purpose.
Yeah.
You know, like when I would actually make myself sick when I had to get up in front of people and talk about the gymnastics team, the coach, the coach. So the fact that I'm a public speaker now is like insane.
Yeah.
So I feel like every single thing. So I think I just ride the wave.
Yeah, I love that.
Like everything you're doing is okay. It doesn't matter because you can always pivot.
You can always
so
pivot.
It's,
you
know,
exactly.
It's lessons learned.
And you have
true.
time.
Yeah.
Time.
Yeah.
People don't think we have.
We have so much time. People are like, "Oh, you're really leaving at 46 or 5? What was I? 45?" And I'm like, "Yeah,
because I want to do something else.
I want to do something else.
What will I do next?
Well, exactly." And
what
then
will I
now
do
I'm
next?
like, "Yeah, it's listening to this kind of stuff though that really keeps people going that are in our shoes, and you know, like." I always ask the high school self because I talk to a lot of high school kids. So I love every single person you meet, like you said, is going to inspire you and give you something to pay it forward to the next.
If you pay attention.
If you pay
attention.
If not,
awesome.
the signs are always there.
Yeah. So I mean, this has been phenomenal.
Yeah,
yes.
So
thank you so much. I mean, I could do this for another 3 hours. We might have to do it again. Have like a 3-person talk show. Yeah, exactly. Thanks, ladies.
Oh my gosh.
You.
Thank you
Thank
so
you so
much.